Hello, here's an introduction to out-of-home trading and buying standards in the UK. Just a bit of background. In terms of describing the UK Out-of-Home Standards Committee and governance, it's a great collaboration between the buy side and the sell side of the out-of-home industry. On the buy side, we have Postscope, Kinetic, Talon and Rapport, the leading specialist agencies. And on the other side, we've got Outsmart from the sell side, with key media owners being JSTCO, Clear Channel, Ocean and Global. And together, they created the Out-of-Home Standards Committee, chaired by Mungo Knott and Anand East, who have both been kind enough to contribute time today for these standards presentations. From there, it splits into two distinct groups. We've got the technical group, chaired by Anand, employed a consultant for the past year or so, which is my good self. And we've also got a data group as well that looks after things like space from the previous presentations, chaired by Andrew Atherton. And in the background, holding it all together, we've got Richard Satterley, who is also a leading light in the World Out of Home organisation. So, what this group have really done well, they've brought together companies, and as a spin-off from the technical data group, we created something called the Coding Club. And this is a club that meets every Thursdays, and it's got technologists and developers from the leading media buyers and media sellers who get together and work on trying to make the industry technically better. There's a link there if you want to download this presentation afterwards, and you can see some of our key work that I'll go on to describe now. So the programmatic trading standards are all built on the core of the IAB TechLab schemas and processes. These are OpenRTB and OpenDirect. OpenRTB being the auction-based transaction model, allowing individual ads, plays to be put up for bid in real time. And that requires the DSP, SSP, and exchange for transactions. The other programmatic standard from IAB TechLab is OpenDirect. It's a direct non-auction based transaction. It allows discovery of available inventory from a media owner, and then you can transact on a variety of metrics, be it audience or frames. It does require direct integration between buyer and seller, but there is no tech tax in the middle. So here's a little story about the UK Standards Committee. It's been going for a long time, and we've been exploring for a long time automated and programmatic trading models and how to standardize them. OpenDirect, the direct trading model, this started in 2017 when some media owners and some media buyers started using this as a basis for the direct trading. Over the next few years, there were agreements made on relevant extensions to try and standardize this, because there was many standards and we're ending up with having to do different implementations. So in 2018, we looked to make it a lot easier and a lot more standardized. I got the chance to contribute in 2019. And in 2020, we published a unified OpenDirect out-of-home implementation guide, which is endorsed by the IAB TechLab as a community extension. In 2021, with a bit of thanks to the pandemic, where a lot of technical advancements and goodwill carried on, IPO and Outsmart members committed to a full implementation over 2021 and into 2022. In 2022, where we are today, we're still supporting some of the implementations, and we're also working directly with IAB TechLab to evolve the standard for wider use. The great thing is that this standard has been taken on board by the OAAA in the USA, and even in the USA now, we've got big media owners like Outfront and Clear Channel adopting this standard too. So, what was the unique things that needed standardizing that weren't already in things like OpenDirect and OpenRTB? Well, for OpenDirect, there were some real key areas that made the difference. And these were describing real-world things in a digital trading model. So in out-of-home, the first unique aspect is a dimension of frames and locations. These are physical screens in physical spaces with very different physical sizes. And as we've seen from Mungo's presentation today, we've got something in space in the UK that helps describe these assets in a common way. Everything from the individual frame level through to the areas that they're sitting. The second area for standardization is around audience and profiles. It's very hard for one party to transact with another party if they haven't got a common currency of audience. So again, in the UK, all the media owners have got together, and we've got the Roots system, which is the industry model, the Joint Industry Committee model for the audience measurement. But even without that in place, if anywhere you've got an agreement between a buyer and seller on a common audience currency, that's a great thing. Delivery, very important with a trading model where you're buying things advance of time. You've got to describe how the campaign is going to be delivered. It's not just going to be one impact. So in terms of delivery metrics, we have concepts of share of time, spot length, how long is the item on the screen, spot break length, how is the item not on the screen. Then we get into the concept of distribution and pacing, and especially with digital out-of-home frames, your campaign may be playing on different digital screens throughout the day, especially if it's an impression-based model. So from 8, 10, to all the way to the evening, you've got to describe a way of how this campaign is going to be delivered. On the investment side of things, doing direct trading with media owners, they may want to trade on a variety of different metrics. There's cost per frame, cost per thousand with audience, or it might just be a fixed price for playing campaigns on certain screens between certain times. And finally, one of the big assets of the out-of-home media industry is its brand safety. There's a lot of work goes in to prevent the wrong adverts playing in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we made sure there were standards and way of conveying what adverts can't play where. So when you put all these standards together, it helps a media owner describe a deal in a constant and really clear format. A media owner can reference their inventory in terms of frames or audience. They can then build some sales rules that are very straightforward in terms of pacing, time, volume, pricing, and prohibitions. And once you've got those sales rules, you've actually made products, packs, deals, offers, and the deals are common between OpenRTB and OpenDirect. You've created a product that you can describe in terms of that pacing, time, volume, pricing, prohibition. Once you've got those packs, then you can trade it. You might then trade it manually. You might trade it via a website. You might trade via OpenDirect, OpenRTB, a third-party API. But the main thing is the common currency, common description of the media that you wish to sell. So when we look at programmatic real-time bidding, again, that's that model where you take that inventory, you apply the sales rules, you create those deals, and you can publish it to the OpenRTB channel. And in the middle, you have the trading stack, you have the DSPs, the SSPs, and the exchanges that allow that media then to be surfaced to the brand or agency. OpenDirect in out-of-home is slightly different in that you go through the same process of describing your inventory in terms of frames or audience, your sales rules, you create those products, deals, and you make them directly available to a buyer. So a buyer can literally, without having any DSPs, exchanges or SSPs in the middle, can look at what you're offering in terms of a media offering, check its availability, and buy. If we put the two together and contrast them, there's a number of areas that are similar and slightly different. So with OpenRTB, the buy-side platform doesn't discover available inventory. It's just there, you bid or not. With OpenRTB, the final cost is set by the buy-side platform, where in OpenDirect, when you're publishing that product, you also set your own prices. In terms of fully automated transactions, currently in the OpenRTB space, this requires manual creations of deal IDs and private marketplaces. With OpenDirect, once you've got the product catalog set up, the transaction can be fully automated. OpenRTB has biddable transactions, of course, and both Open and RTB can be both bought in real time. Both methods enable transactions targeting audience impacts. And OpenDirect is unique because you can describe your products in terms of audience or frames. So you can either sell audiences that see frames or frames that see audiences. You can do both in OpenDirect. And in terms of a functional comparison, again, I hope I've got this across. They're so very similar. Everything up until the point of the actual transaction is pretty much the same. The main difference, OpenRTB being bidding, which you do within an hour of going live. And OpenDirect is where you can buy something an hour, 24 hours, days, weeks, months in advance, as long as you know that inventory is available. Both emerging to use the same ad serving standards. At the end of the day, both use the same CMS or scheduler. In the background, with most media owners, it's either Broadsign or Scala actually playing the advert out. And finally, an area that we'll look at towards the end of today, proof of play standards. How do we prove that something played on a digital screen or was posted on a paper screen? So from there, we've described OpenDirect and the standards. And now we're going to look at the proposal for OpenRTB and the great work that's been done with the Outsmart, the OAAA, and the IB TechLab to bring some standardization to this very important area. I'm here today to talk about a really exciting bit of innovation in the world of out-of-home media standards. It's a brand new proposal for OpenRTB to bring out-of-home media into its procedure, process, and trading model. There's a lot of words there, but it's a standard presentation that I don't want to chop and change too much. But basically, what this is, it's about bringing out-of-home media in a standardized way to the main OpenRTB trading model. The reason why this is important is currently there's various interpretations and implementations of OpenRTB with out-of-home media being done by multiple SSPs, multiple DSPs, and it's led us to the situation where if there's any supply-side platform who wishes to trade with a demand-side platform in this workspace, there's got to be custom integrations on both ends. So it's a real barrier to brands and trading desks discovering out-of-home media, where there's so much work got to be done with the strong SSPs and DSPs in the market to actually understand what we're selling. So, the IAB, the OAAA in America, which is the standards group there, and Outsmart in the UK, got their experts, got their members together to try and make sense of this and try and bring out-of-home media to the OpenRTB standard in a consistent and sensible fashion. And these decks go through the proposal that detail the differences between trading in the online world of digital display and the real-world aspects of outdoor display. We'll cover some of the OpenRTB extensions or conventions that are going to be required to bring out-of-home to the OpenRTB model. And we'll reference some implementations and recommendations. We've actually written a lot of support documentations and schemas and files that will help people implement this in their own SSP and DSP structures. So, I mentioned these before, but the contributing standards bodies are the IAB TechLab, the OAAA, the Out-of-Home Advertising Association of America, and Outsmart, the Out-of-Home Advertising Association of the United Kingdom. And as this process goes along, we're actually bringing on board more and more industry associations from around the world. Key contributors in terms of SSPs, DSPs, and technology providers include the Media Owners Global, Ocean, Deco. We've got Place Exchange Centro View as technical specialists in the middle from both supply and demand. And of course, Broadsign, Yahoo, Hivestack, the Trade Desk, Triton, all people who've brought together key experts from the world of SSPs and DSPs, and not just trading out of home, across the whole digital media spectrum. It's been an absolute privilege working with all these guys and working on standards that will actually work in real life scenarios. So what's the unique differences to an online and out-of-home display? There was a lot of work went in to make this very short bullet point list. The first real difference is multiple versus variable impressions. So in an online world, when you play one ad, it'll play to one person. You've got one impression of that ad on the screen that's usually seen by one person. Obviously in the out-of-home world, like this big screen here, and the venue we're at today, these slides are being seen by many people all at once. So we've got to find a way of putting this concept of multiple impressions into the OpenRTB model. And the second thing, again, which demonstrates behind us, in the out-of-home business, we've got screens of highly variable size. We've got a huge one behind me at the moment. I've got a little small one prompting me to what's going on there. But as you go along your daily life, you'll see them. You've got small screens in trains, you've got bigger screens in bus shelters, you've got wide, long ones by the side of the road, and if you go to a mall, you'll probably see all the sizes in the world. So it needs to be a constant way of describing these physical sizes. The next area that was a big difference as well, in the online world, basically everyone's on public networks, or they're on the mobile networks or Wi-Fi networks at home. But what you'll find is in the out-of-home world, all the screens and devices are sitting on private networks. So all those great things you're used to, like working out where someone's position is through Wi-Fi's or mobile masts, that's not available because these screens are sitting on private networks that don't have openly shareable IP addresses or MAC addresses. The next area is non-persistent connections. We're here in London today, and there's lots and lots of frames and panels on the streets outside. The reality is that there's not enough money to install fiber networks, cable networks to all these screens. So the vast majority are running on 3G, 4G, 5G networks. Now, whilst there's great service, no one can guarantee a 24/7 connection to the local cell tower, especially in train stations where you get a few thousand people on an evening. Comms becomes difficult. So we've got a network that doesn't always have a persistent connection, and it may lead to longer than real-time delays in terms of an advert being served. The industry standard seems to be it's no worse than about 1 to 2 hours, but it's something to bear in mind and something we need to design around when we have standards. Second to last, proprietary device attributes. So there's not one manufacturer or just a few manufacturers like we have for mobile phones like iPhones, Samsung, where we are today. Basically, every media owner will have very unique devices that suit their venues. It can be big LED screens, custom-made LCD screens. So there's very few common ways of describing things. And this is why things like space that Mungo's been talking about today is very important, where the UK industry got together to come together to determine those proprietary device attributes that can be shared and used and understood by everyone. And finally, the main big area and the big asset out of home, it's a complete brand-safe channel. And it's brand-safe because every single bit of content can be previewed before it's set and displayed on a screen. And that's just a bit of understanding that people have got to take on board as well, that if you've got an advert that you've just created, it will take 12, 24 hours to get that approved for broadcast distribution on an out-of-home screen network. So they're the differences between online and out-of-home display. What I'm going to go through the next few slides is a little technical, but it'll try and illustrate the accommodations that are being proposed by the IAB TechLab for the next version of OpenRTB. So, if you're familiar with the standard, there's an object that describes impressions. And the proposal is to add 3 attributes to it to describe that multiplier. We don't need to go into it in full detail today, but just so you know it's there. There's how many people are seeing that advert at the time, so that's the multiplier. The multiplier type, who's qualifying how many people this is being multiplied by? And this is where in the UK we can use things like route to say this is a recommended supplier type and vendor that's justifying that multiplier value. At the bottom here, there's a few other things on the impression object as well that help with the creative. So we have lots of different sizes and shapes of screens in the out-of-home business. The things like boxing being allowed just helps get that fewer number of video sizes and ratios out onto the networks. And there's some smaller things there around timestamps when we think it's going to be played out. And in terms of online display, where an advert plays and then it doesn't, we can describe how many times an advert will be on screen. That's the E-time. The second area is describing the device. So what is the advert being played out by? And we're proposing a lot of new objects that help that. So we might not be able to identify devices by their IP location, so we want to describe where that screen is by a geo object. It could be as simple as a lat long. Device types, we just make sure that it's completely clear that the bid you are bidding on in the OpenRTB stream is out of home. And then we try and convey in terms of pixels per inch how big the screen is. So In the existing OpenRTB bid, you can say what the width and the height of the creative is in terms of pixels, but with the addition of pixels per inch, you can really get a size of what size this screen is. And then finally into the device identifications, there's something called the IFA and the EIDs, and basically this just gives a chance for a media owner to describe their screen as a common ID number that might be space, or it might be their own proprietary way of saying, this is a large screen that's LED and it's pointing in a certain direction. Finally, the digital out-of-home objects is a big addition to OpenRTB, and this has got some very important things that we need for out-of-home in terms of the name, the venue type, where the screen is. So if you look into target railway stations, cinemas, malls, we can describe that in the digital out-of-home object. And then there's information about the publisher. And the publisher information really helps when we start to get the ads text and the security that sits in the RTB stream. So what I would do, we've gotten quite a technical with those few slides, but I'd recommend anyone who's responsible for DSPs, SSPs integration, be it on the buy side or sell side, please reference these links. I don't have a keyboard with me today to go through them in detail, but basically what you'll find is well-worked examples of the bid requests, bid responses, and there's useful schemas that actually help you write them without referencing any technical documents. The final link, everything I've described on the presentation today, there's a full document that expands on this further, and again, this document will be available just above the comments on this YouTube video.